Blender for Noobs.
Hello and welcome back to the Secrets of Blender modeling the Berkey spacecraft. In this section, section 10 of this tutorial, we are going to be going over the details that we did and modeling what I call the bridge on the center of the craft. So this is what I've come up with. Obviously, you've probably come up with something quite different. And you may notice also that I've changed the position of the second camera just to kind of imitate the original image. And you can see that a lot of the details on the bottom are not really showing up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to end up putting another light panel down here. And of course we're only rendering at 100 samples, so a lot of this is not going to show up very clearly anyway. But even at 100 samples so far, I'm very happy with the process so far. If we look at the model itself, let me just go ahead and just select the first two layers. I'll just go over briefly what I did. Of course, you've seen what I did over here. And on the top, what I did is I decided that it was still, even after resizing it, it was still too small. So I sized it a little bit bigger and just moved it forward a little bit. Down at the bottom, I created kind of a mass structure coming down with two platforms. This is supposedly, in my mind, it's going to be like a landing point where I can put, I have this ship in place for here, but I can model a nice ship to put in there. Have just a lot of details here. I've used those panel things that I created to just create some sort of lattice type of structure. Put antennas out here. Put a mast down here with the satellite dishes hooked onto it. And then I came over here to the side and created a few things. Oh, forgot the wings. Forgot the solar panels. Okay, so over here I just basically I used all of the pieces, only all of the pieces that we created for our details. However, on this one, what I did is I did extrude some of this paneling here, and I used my little cube object to create a few pieces here. But other than that, it's all the original details that we originally modeled. So you can see what I did there, just created some structures there. And on the solar panels, I just added a few of them, put them over here, and I noticed there was some detail on the image out here, so I just put that little doodad that we created out on the very end, some over here, and a dish over here. And if we look on this side, this was looking pretty bland, so I just added some of the pieces here. And really, looking at it, I think it would be nice to have a little bit more detail underneath the solar panels, just to make them look a little bit better. Another thing just to note, if we look at some of the structure here, I started putting all these structures here, but really forgetting about the bottom of the platforms. So just to make sure that it's, you have the extra detail on there, I put a lot of details on the bottom as well. Not very many, but just enough to show that it has something there that's showing through. And then interestingly enough, if we go back to our view here, this is the camera angle for the second camera that I did, trying to get the basically the angle that the image is in, fairly close. But if I bring in my lamps and look at the plane, it's almost exactly where the the horizon view is, which is interesting. I didn't plan that. It just turned out that way, which is kind of nice. But anyway, we're not going to use this plane. It's just like I said, it's just a reference there so we can get some shadowing, make our sample renders, our preview renders, look a little bit more interesting than what they would normally look. Also, of course, I had to move this plane down to accommodate for the extra details here. Okay, so one more thing, the rendering is still rendering under a minute. which is not bad for a preview render. Yours is probably rendering, you know, some of yours is going to be rendering faster, some might be slower. Just for your information, I'm using a GeForce GTX 650, which is, you know, it's not the greatest card, but it gets the job done. I definitely want to upgrade as soon as possible, but that will just have to wait until I can get something a little bit better than what I got. Okay, so looking at what I'm calling the bridge, of course, it's probably not even a bridge. It's just a, you know, a detail that John Berkey decided to paint on here to, you know, something that looks interesting. It actually stands out to me because of the curved surface. I mean, if you look at practically everything on this space station or spacecraft, whatever it is, I mean, it's pretty industrial. Everything is hard edges. Mainly, there is a little bit of curving, but this just kind of stands out to me, and it's in the center top. So to me, that's where you would put like a control center or bridge, and that's what I'm gonna create for mine, and that's what I'm gonna call mine is probably the bridge or control center. So we'll look at doing that. Now, sadly, again, I am not happy with what I've created here. So I'm going to be redoing that. As we look at the image here, just not happy with it. It looks sort of like a cauliflower or something to me. It's just not working for me. So I'm going to redo that. Of course, you don't have to do that, but I've decided that what I'm going to do is make it a little bit more like this. I'm going to have these pieces at the top and then more or less smooth at the bottom. And of course, you know, free to add some details sitting on the hull itself on that, but I'm just going to kind of redo this. So very quickly, just going to choose the first layer there, do a Shift A and create a cylinder, and T into my menu here, and don't need any of the caps, so I'm going to take that off. I'm going to leave it at the default 32 vertices, and RX90, and see if we can bring it up into place here. Somehow my 3D cursor has gotten off, so I'm just going to do a Shift S, cursor to center, so that will be there where it needs to be next time. Actually, I think I will also just do a Shift S and selection to cursor, and that will make sure that that is indeed that cylinder is indeed centered. Okay, and just going to bring this forward. And let's go ahead and go into full screen view here and scale along the Y. Go into our 3 side view and let's just move this into place. Just want to make sure I'm getting it the same size that I had it before. Okay. And now I can scale it down a little bit. Actually, let's just scale along the Z and X. So S Shift Y. So it kind of starts right there, and then I can tab in edit mode, select vertex here, and Alt select these vertices, and do the same thing. S Shift Y. Scale this inward, and it is about right there. Pretty close. So tab out of that, select this old one, and I'm just going to X delete it. Now, of course, if I again change my mind, decided to go back, I could always grab this one on the back. I may leave this one here, or I may change it. I'm not going to change it in the tutorial. You're free to, you know, do it however you like. But then going back to this piece, I'm going to go into edit mode, select faces, and select one of these faces here. And I think just going to Shift D to duplicate the face, and let's bring it up a little bit and scale it down. You bring it forward a little bit here, extrude. Something like that. And then you can L select this piece that we just created and just bring it down and kind of into this other object here. Get it placed in there. Okay, something like that. And then I'm going to choose P and separate by selection and tab out of edit mode there and select this one here. We can see that the origin point is in the center, which is where we want. Choose one front view, and then we can take this piece here and do a Shift D, duplicate, and then rotate it along the surface like this. And I think this, in a way, really mimics the original image a little bit better than what I was trying to do with the other thing. And of course, if we wanted to be really precise, we could actually duplicate and do an R rotate along the y-axis and give it a number. You know, if we figured out the exact angles and the number of pieces that we want here. No need for me to be that precise right now. So, well, actually it might have been good because then I wouldn't have this gap, but that's all right. I can just rotate them a little bit and get it closer to where it needs to be. Okay, so something like that. May or may not subsurf this original piece right here. It really depends on if you want to get rid of these ridges from showing. Of course, another thing we can do is just smooth shade it and see if it will show up the way we want it to show up. We'll see that in the render. But I think I like that a little bit better. Nice thing that we can do is a quick render and just kind of see what it looks like. Okay, I think I do like that much better. The only thing now, of course, like I was saying, is you can tell that it looks very bland. So probably the best thing to do with that is grab some of our details and make them extremely small and just kind of ornament different places around the front here. But you wouldn't want to do that until we get the bridge done, because there's going to be some pieces that are going up the center here. And I'm not going to go, in the tutorial, I'm not going to go through adding anything to that. With as much as we've done now, of course, you're quite capable of doing that part yourself. But I probably will go back myself and add some pieces to the front of this. Alright, so let's get started on that bridge. And I'm just going to go up to full view here. Let's go back to our first layer. And I'm just going to start with a cube, so Shift A, and create a cube, scale it down, bring it up. Go into side view here, and just going to go ahead and tab in edit mode, get rid of that face at the bottom, and L select this, scale it down quite a bit more. Maybe something that big. And bring it in here and just rotate it so that it's kind of along the same angle. Something like that. And choose this face and extrude. Extrude some more. Maybe bring this down a little bit. Go to 3. Side view and rotate. Extrude some more. Bring it out about that much there. And I think with this it might be helpful to actually mirror this, because we want it to be, or at least I want it to be, symmetrical on both sides. So let's let's go ahead and do a Control R and create an edge loop right in the middle. Just click twice to release that edge loop there. And then we can choose vertex here, go into 7 top view, and just choose all these vertices on the left. Actually turn off occlude here so I can make sure that I get them all. And X delete vertices. And tab back into object mode, and we should be able to come back here, add a mirror modifier, and it's already mirrored nicely along the X. If you want to use your mirror object, just to make sure. Oh, just tons of cubes here. Okay, and by the way, all these cubes and everything, all those pieces in the outliner, don't panic, because the nice thing, what we did is we put all of these pieces on their own level, so we can select all, and we're actually going to join all these into one piece. There's really no sense in keeping all these separate pieces, because if we or anybody needs to go in and change anything, we can go into the one object and go in edit mode and else select anything we need. No reason to name all these different pieces unless you want to be really intricate about it. I don't see a need to do that. So just a side note there. Go back into this view here and back into what's going to be our bridge piece. And select this, go into edit mode, choose face. And I'm just going to choose this one here and extrude it out like this, probably about right there, and probably bring this down a little bit like that so it kind of form fits the surface. Okay, back into object mode, and now I'm going to add subdivision surface. So add modifier, subdivision surface. Okay, now when you have the subdivision surface in the mirror modifier together, you always want to remember to put these in the correct order. And there's an easy way that I've come up with to remember that. And that is simply M for mirror comes before S for subsurface. So always know that subsurf goes on the bottom in this case. Okay, and I'm going to bump this up and make sure they're both 2. So you can see it's already kind of looking sort of like what's there, or at least in my imagination what's there. And let's go ahead and just smooth this. Okay, so what I want to do, let me tab back into object mode, and it's nice with the the mirror here. We can kind of see how this looks and how our changes are going to affect this. So I think what I want to do is I want to grab these 2 faces and just extrude, and just want to bring that up a little bit. I'm not sure if I want it to be that far. Bring it back down a little bit, maybe about that much, and maybe even bring it back like that a little bit. Okay, now you can see as we extruded along that angle, it is broken off from the mirror. So all we need to do is come in here. We don't need this inner face here. So just X delete that face, and I'm going to go and select vertices and select these 2, and maybe the other ones. No, that should be fine, and just bring those together. And if they're not clipping, then we'll go back here and just make sure clipping is turned on the mirror, and that just allows the geometry to clip together. Okay, so what I want to do, I want to put a row of windows here for the bridge. So I'm going to choose face and choose this face here. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and create some edge loops so we can get some windows in there. So R, and it's probably 3 of them is enough. Okay, and then go back to faces, and let's choose these faces here. Go to our pivot point and change this to individual origins, and T for our tool menu, we're going to extrude individual. So just S to scale these down just a little bit, and again want to extrude individual, and just bring those back a little bit, and then one more time to give it some sharpness, and just bring them back ever so slightly. Okay, so I don't want them to be these kind of rounded looking windows. I want more rectangular. So I'm going to add some more edge loops. And as you pull your edge loop over, you can see that it's pretty nicely making it kind of rectangular. Now, as you notice that when you do this, it's creating some creasing here, which we don't necessarily want. So one of the things that you can do to fix that is go along these edge loops that you created and just Alt select the edge loop. And we do want to keep this part of the edge loop here, so I'm just going to choose the C tool, and with the middle mouse button just deselect these. And using our GG key, just going to move it all the way over to right up against the previous edge there, and do a select all, choose your W menu, and remove doubles. And you'll notice up at the top it'll show you how many vertices it removes. The nice thing about that is, or one of the, it helps with the creasing, but another thing that it helps with is you don't have all this geometry for the edge loop that we created. So same thing with this one. Just going to Alt select all of these, come down here, C and deselect this area here. Choose GG, move it over. A select everything, W, and remove doubles. And you'll start seeing some of these long creases going away. Now some of these middle creases, there's some things that we can do to help that out, but I don't think it's really going to hurt that bad. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and speed it up a little bit, since you know how to do that. Okay, and that, by the way, is one of those nice things to know, to actually, when you're creating something like this and you need to put in edge loops to help out your subdivision surface geometry, you can basically merge your edge loops that way, or pieces of your edge loops, and reduce your geometry at the same time, helping the look of your geometry. Another thing that I've noticed, if we zoom out, this control center thing is way too big. So I'm just going to tab into edit mode, object mode, and just scale it down quite a bit. Definitely don't want it to be that big. In fact, let's just use this as a reference, kind of get an idea of the scale. Maybe something like that. So go back in here and continue to work with this. So I'm just going to bring this back a little bit. And of course, as you're modeling, one of the things that I've done with tutorials in the past is you start out with the tutorial and I follow it pretty precisely, trying to get it the way the person that's doing it. But as I get a certain amount into the tutorial, I start having ideas of my own and start making things my own, and you want to do that. And the reason for that is, of course, that's the way you learn, is coming up with your own imaginative ideas on how to change things as you go along. There's no rule that says you have to follow the tutorial exactly. Definitely use your own imagination and come up with your own ideas. So I'm going to take this face and can't GG it down, unfortunately, because there's no existing geometry here. But what we can do, I'm going to go into side view, and I'm just going to move it down more like that. And I also want to add an edge loop here, somewhere in here, and just choose all this geometry right here. And let's see if I can just scale it down. See if it's going to do what I want it to do. Not quite. Maybe have to extrude. And I'm not quite liking that either. So I'm going to take these vertices here and just kind of move those down a little bit. Can't really use the GG tool on that because this is mirrored, so it's not really considered a full edge loop yet. And let's go back into faces, select these faces, and let's see, east, bring that in. Yeah, that's good. I think I'll just do 2 E extrudes there and give it some sort of like, almost looks like a Klingon ship now in a way, but just give it some characterization there. Not really liking the way this is squared off. I wanted it to be a little bit more curved. So let's see if I can do something with the sides here. Extrude them out, scale them down. So that looks a little bit better. I do want to, though, it's sort of like not as nicely curved as what I would like it to be. So let me see if I can do something there. So I'm just going to come into the top view here and let me B-box select all of this. And maybe not that. And front view, and just bump up the number 2 key on the numpad to get it more into the perspective here, and just kind of rotate just a little bit and maybe move it up a little bit, and that will kind of fix that up a little bit. But just to go a little bit further, I'm going to choose vertices here and grab these 2 and just bring them up, and maybe grab all of these, pull them down, maybe rotate them a little bit, and then I see some of this sticking up. Maybe bring that down, maybe not that. Yeah. Okay, closer to what I'm picturing. Okay, I think a little bit heavy on the back here, so I'm going to come back here, and I think what I'll do is just grab all of these vertices right here, just kind of bring them down and maybe back in a little bit. And these as well need to be moved down. So I'm just going to hit GG and move them down evenly, which is nice. That way I can take these and move those down further. Okay, and that kind of finishes the bridge off, but of course it's very plain. What I'm going to do, and of course what you're free to do if you'd like, I'm not going to go into the bridge and start adding any geometry in here because this is subsurfed, and of course it's just going to boost up our poly count. But what I'm going to do is take some of our fine detail work that we did and just kind of do the same thing that I'm going to do with this outer hole. This front outer hole is just ornament with some of that detailing. and maybe even around it a little bit, and I think that will look just fine. Feel free to use your imagination to continue that, or if you like, just leave it as it is. And as I'm looking at it, I think I'm just going to continue to bring this down just a little bit. Just make sure it's curved in there the way I want it to be. Okay, that's more like what I picture it to be. All right, so that is the bridge. And believe it or not, we are pretty much done with the modeling process. In just 10 versions of this, we have completed this intricate spaceship, which looked really, from the image, looked completely overwhelming. But as you can see, as you take the different pieces that you're going to be working with and deal with them separately, and break everything down, you can really create an intricate model just by taking it step by step like that. Now, of course, like I said, if you'd like to continue and just add a little bit more detail around the bridge and around the front and whatever you'd like to do in the back, feel free to make your own changes for that. I definitely will be adding a few changes of my own there. But beyond that, I'm going to go ahead and save. Beyond that, what I'd like you to do is sort of your homework until we get to the next section is go ahead and go into your outliner and start naming your pieces. I'm just going to do the first one, which is going to be very easy, and select all these greebles that we created and do a Control J and make sure that they're all one piece. And you'll notice that when I do that, it doesn't piece them all together. What you have to do, going to do a select all. You actually have to go in and select one piece as the last piece, because the reason Blender does that is it has to know what to name the entire piece, and if you select everything and just try to join them, it won't do it. So I'm just going to select one final piece, shift select the piece, and do a Control J, and Blender will go away for a little bit and come back and it will all be one big piece. So then when you look through your outliner, you can find that one piece, control click in there, and I'm just going to name these greebles. So that leaves you with not a whole lot left that you have to go in here and name, but just want to make sure that you go in there and give your pieces logical names so that, you know, if you decide that you want to share your model with somebody else, when they go to look at it, they will you know, not be lost as far as what all the pieces are. Wow! Well, this is a good lesson to be learned. Before you join all those pieces, you want to make sure you apply all your array modifiers and everything. And then you can go ahead and join those pieces together. So let me back up a little bit here. Control Z. Okay, so I have my separate pieces. So kind of a good thing that happened, just so in case you do something like that, you'll know how to fix it. Let me go ahead and bring up the outliner here so it's easier to see. And then of course these all these masks and everything have the array modifier on them. So really you can scroll down here and just look for the modifier symbol and see if it's something that is in these pieces here, or you can look over here as well and see if you have the array modifier. And these are all something different, so come down here. Okay, we're starting to see some of the different things that we created with the array modifier. So we need to go and just apply those. So go ahead and apply all those before you merge those together. And just another quick note, if we go back and select our model here, something like that we did maybe the bridge or different pieces of this model, where we have the subsurface, feel free to go ahead and apply the mirror modifier. But what I recommend as you do your models, never apply the subsurface. And why would I say that? The reason that I say that is because the subsurface, once you apply that, it is pretty much unrecoverable. If you apply the mirror, say if we have, this, or the shell of the ship, something something in here mirrored, and we apply the mirror, or just say the bridge. Let's say we go ahead and apply the mirror here, and this is no longer a mirrored object, it's the full object. We can easily cut this in half and bring the mirror modifier back, no problem. But if you take this and you apply the subsurface, then later if you need to do anything with this model where you wanted to maybe decrease the subsurf or enhance it or do other things with it, then it's too late. You've already got all that geometry there. Again, sharing your model with somebody else, selling it, or whatever you want to do, I would never apply that. In that way, you can leave it up to the person that is working with the model to decide whether they want to apply more subsurf or leave it the way it is. Just a good practice so that you can go back and change your model if you need to. So go ahead and merge your greebles together, get that fixed, name your parts logically, and in the next part 11 of this tutorial, what we're going to be starting to get into is materials. So basically we have the cake and we have the icing on the cake, and I think for me modeling is the cake. It tastes really good, but doing the materials and texturing and final composition, that's all the icing, because it's really nice to start to see your final result come into play. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 11.